The third way we think CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program, to create smart contracts, to allow targeted policy functions. For example, welfare payment. For example, consumption coupon. For example, food stamp. By programming CBDC, those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized. For example, for food. So this potential programmability can help government agencies to precisely target their support to those people who need support.
In the early days of Bitcoin, the belief was that one of its most important characteristics was that it was uncorrelated to other assets. Now that notion quickly changed as a strong positive correlation developed to the Nasdaq. Most analysts believed that the correlation was fueled by 1, excess liquidity in the system, and 2, the existence of ultra-low rates that at the same time benefited the Nasdaq based on Wall Street's traditional discounted cash flow models, and also benefited Bitcoin, which is often viewed as a non-yielding asset.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Support this great content by hitting the cash app and by joining the Patreon.
And we had the Bitcoin and Nasdaq correlation disappear once AI came on the scene. And we know who's behind that, of course, the Fed, pumping money into AI stocks. And the Bitcoin and Nasdaq correlation is definitely going to come back because remember, Nasdaq represents tech and Bitcoin and crypto is definitely the future in tech. Now we have the Fed keeping rates higher for longer. And who's helping that? That's right, Japan. Japan is keeping their rates unchanged once again. And we know once Japan gets to moving, whenever that is, we know that's going to be the signal of the U.S. falling. Everybody keeps asking me, what are these signals we're looking for? Of course, we're going to be looking for Japan getting out of those negative interest rates, and we know they hold a lot of United States debt. And then, of course, we have the drums are beating in these cyber attacks. And we have more strikes coming. So that means that more people are going to be getting laid off. And guys, this is coming during the holiday season. And this is going to affect the whole United States economy. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you. And then on top of it, guys, we have the government shutdown looming. And we know it's nothing but the Hegelian dialectic. But right now, guys, we have order out of chaos. And we can clearly see something is about to happen. We're getting to the climax of the movie. So get your popcorn, sit back, and let it play out. Because we know, when it comes to the NWO, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
Strikes and higher rates and government shutdowns. The Fed has put two risks on the table. First, another possible hike and tighter next year. And second, a higher long-term or neutral Fed funds rate that could make stocks less attractive or more challenging in the long run. Here's what Fed Chair Jay Powell said on Wednesday at the press conference about the neutral rate.
Stronger economic activity means rates. We have to do more with rates, and that's what that meaning is telling you. In terms of what the neutral rate can be, you know, we know it by its works. We only know it by its works, really.
Yesterday on the exchange, renowned economist John Taylor, a leading expert on the neutral rate, said it could be at or just below 4% compared with the Fed's current estimate of 2.5%.
It's creeping back up again. At least that's what the Fed is saying. And I think that if that's the case, then we're going to see a normal interest rate, 2% inflation, 2% real, that's 4%. And so maybe that's where we'll be eventually, maybe a little bit lower than that. But I think that's what people should think about. And probably that's what's going through the markets right now.
Now, all of this hawkishness prompting some criticism of the Federal Reserve. Bernard Baumel, he's an economist at the Economic Outlook Group. He writes, they're behaving as if we cannot possibly have a sustained period of declining inflation and simultaneously enjoy healthy economic growth with low unemployment. Of course, the Fed's forecast will almost certainly end up being wrong. The problem for investors is that while the Fed may not be the best forecasters, they are the most important forecasters, and its outlook needs to be central to investment plans. So it's something you got to think about, Becky, when you consider what stocks make sense, which stocks don't make sense, and which investments make sense, because if that hurdle rate is higher, it's got to be factored in.
Bank of Japan leaving interest rates unchanged overnight. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida was in New York this week for the UN General Assembly, and he spoke yesterday at the Economic Club of New York about encouraging the asset management industry in Japan and attracting more foreign investors. Prime Minister Kishida has made a renewed focus on capitalism a cornerstone of his agenda. I moderated a Q&A session with him yesterday and asked about Japan's negative interest rate policy.
Just politically speaking, though, if they did end zero interest rates, would it make meeting your political agenda more difficult because of the shrinking liquidity, or would it perhaps be more helpful because it would strengthen the yen?
My government is closely monitoring the movements in the foreign exchange market, whether it is excessive, at a high level of vigilance, and will appropriately respond to excessive volatility without ruling out any options.
Now, the Bank of Japan today did not raise interest rates. They held things steady. But Governor Ueda there did make comments that suggested by the end of the year, they could very well finally move away from negative interest rates, which is something that has kind of mired the Japanese government, the Japanese economy for decades at this point. You've seen what's happened over the years. They need to get out of the negative interest rate policy to do things like convince consumers to actually spend money and actually take the money that's been in savings account to reinvest into stock markets. They need to find ways to see growth, because if you look at the Japanese wages, they were making more money than Americans. Yep. Yeah, the demographics, will talk that, but they were making more in wages than Americans back in the 1980s. Yep. They're now making about 40% less than the average American. They have a huge demographics problem where the death rate is actually higher than the birth rate. They have 10% of their population are aged 80 and over, 29% of the population aged 65 and older, and that's the oldest in the world, just in terms of a population. Great longevity, but not great in terms of what you have to do to help that economy. He seems very aware, the Prime Minister, of all of these problems and is trying to move to tackle things. He's talking about a new capitalism, wants to redistribute some money to the middle class to try and shore things up and move those. But he's also very aware of the demographics program, and they're talking about a new program that would make it much easier for working moms by helping out with childcare, because they need stay-at-home moms to get back into the workforce to help with things too.
And remember this, they made a slight move a couple months ago that really affected, the global markets in terms of the ban that they were going to let.
The yield curve.
No. And if you can see the leaked messages that came out overnight from the UAW, reports of those leaked messages, internal messages within the UAW, basically saying that they want to sow operational chaos, do reputational damage by dragging out these negotiations. I'd say they're as far apart as we've seen them in some time. Then we will hear about more strike locations, and those strikes would begin at noon.
Yeah, I think increasingly the window seems to be closing on the possibility that we can stay open and see Washington continue to function and not have a shutdown. I mean, increasingly what you're seeing now is, the faction in the House, which just won't accept the reality of divided government. I mean, when you have divided government, by definition, you're going to need bipartisan consensus on a spending bill, period. The rules of the Senate and the fact that the Senate is controlled by the Democrats means bipartisanship. And it just is amazing how people think that somehow you present to the other side an idea that they don't necessarily agree with, and then you tell them, well, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to shut down the government until you do.
Right. They are shooting themselves in the foot.
they are shooting, I think, the country in the foot. They're shooting the Republican Party
and the Democrats say they don't want to shut down. They love what's happening.
They love it.
Republicans would love it on the other side if they saw the same turmoil.
That's not the point. I don't care, but,
Look,
but right now
the Democratic whip this morning or yesterday said that it is their price to help Kevin if it comes to that vote to vacate the chair. Their price on the Democratic side is to insist he get rid of the impeachment inquiry, which, again, that's exactly what the Democrats want. You know, so you sort of, they're very transparent about it. So, I mean, they're not clean either.
So you got mad at me for being in a bad mood about the state of the country.
Well, we've got a great country.
I know, I know that. I'm just saying, on top of all this, we've got strikes left and right. We've, what do we do with Ukraine? Now we're arguing about, and that's plays into this whole dynamic. People think, if you can't protect your own border, why are we worrying about Ukraine's border? That's what you see certain factions say.
Look, there's just a lot of anger right now among the among the populace. I mean, there's just a lot of anger. And at some point, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we're going through a political realignment in our country. I mean, you start to see, like, Republicans in the Senate, like Josh Hawley, come together with an Elizabeth Warren on a bill. You see a Marco Rubio, getting together with a Sherrod Brown. I mean, these are alliances that didn't used to happen.
So we're going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
And so we'll import Chinese-based CBDC technology. So it's going to be CBDC in a box provided to you by the People's Bank of China.
But every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every piece of art, every private business, every piece of real estate will eventually be a token on a blockchain, an entry on a ledger, permanent and immutable. We will have truth instead of trust, and we will save over $7 trillion a year. 6 to 8% of global GDP is wasted by the friction of the trust industry that's necessary when you have dual entry accounting. With triple entry accounting, which is what a blockchain is, we get rid of all of that friction. It's a beautiful future.
Like what you see in China and their social credit scoring systems, right? If we get identity wrong, it could be a tool to enslave humanity. And if we get it right, it could be a tool to liberate humanity. And as an American, I'm obviously rooting for the one that's on the side of freedom.
Bitcoin is an international asset. And also, I do believe the role of crypto is it's digitizing gold.
I actually believe this technology is going to be very important. Look at it. We have been part of a huge revolution in investing through ETFs. We believe that ETFs will be changing the whole way we invest. Many people still use it as a means, people are investing it for indexing. No, the majority of people who are putting money in in ETFs are active investors that are buying exposure. The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. And if we can have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem.
Cryptoteacher and the New World Order book, plus the 3 Kids books. It's time to re-educate. Also, new to cryptos, Coinbase, Bitrue, Binance. Do not forget book links and crypto links are in the description. The stock channel, guys. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, spread everywhere. You have your Kobo, your chip stocks, your banking, your gaming. While everybody's sitting at home, get on stocks, the Seaver, the biotech stocks. And while everybody's at home wishing They were still getting that free money. What are they doing? Drinking and smoking weed. Don't forget about those stocks, and you have a wonderful day. The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids books. You know, I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID-33. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.